Welcome to the STARR Coalition podcast. My name is Luke Kramer, Executive Director of the STARR Coalition. We're so glad that you're here with us today as we meet with some of the greatest minds in advocacy, research, and the treatment of those living with central nervous system disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, and other indications. But we're very excited today to have with who has become just a stalwart voice in schizophrenia advocacy, Cecilia McGough. Now, Cecilia is the executive director and founder, right, of Students with Schizophrenia. It's an incredible group of individuals who are really opening up the conversation around schizophrenia with young people and kind of really taking an innovative, progressive approach of how we talk about schizophrenia and move this conversation forward. So thank you, Cecilia, for being with us today, and I am excited to be able to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So tell me a little bit, kind of what brought you to where you are today in the advocacy work you're doing? Kind of give us a view of what brought you to where you are.
Well, what started my advocacy is, I'm someone who lives with schizophrenia. I have the diagnosis of schizophrenia. I live with hallucinations and also a certain level of paranoia. And as a college student on campus, I was afraid to even get the medical help that I needed. It actually took me 8 months after a suicide attempt to finally get that mental health that I needed. And it was because of people's reactions. I was afraid of what people would think about me. I remember talking on the phone with my mom telling me, don't tell anyone about this. Think of your future. Think of your sister's futures. People are going to think that you're crazy. People are going to think you're dangerous, and you won't be able to get a job. And this really made me hide my different symptoms because schizophrenia is shied away from, even in the mental health community. Sometimes unintentionally. It's just because when you talk about hallucinations, it makes people feel uncomfortable. And so because of this is why I founded the organization Students with Schizophrenia, was because I wanted to make sure that these different symptoms in the mental health community was being represented, all different symptoms, such as hallucinations and delusions, making sure we are covering the full spectrum of mental health.
You know, one of the conversations that we had is how people maybe view schizophrenia, that it is not, I think we talked about the glamorous mental illness, right? Where you have a lot of celebrities and people that come out and talk about their bipolar disorder or their depression. And not that it's necessarily celebrated, but it is a part of our conversation within popular culture. But yet we are not there yet with schizophrenia. What are some of the unique challenges that you found as an advocate or as trying to be a voice for individuals living with schizophrenia? What are some challenges that you've seen or kind of the biggest to really move this conversation forward?
Well, with schizophrenia, it is, as you say, sort of not the more glamorous or out there in the spotlight as much because it is sort of the definition of what people usually think of as crazy. Mm-hmm. When you tell people you see, hear, feel things that aren't there, they think that's crazy. Or if you have a belief or that, like a delusion that isn't accepted within society, that is also a lot of people's definition of what crazy is. So there is that challenge because we don't have very many leaders out there that are open about having psychosis. I thought it was really amazing. A little while back, actually Lady Gaga opened up a bit about having some experiences with psychosis. So we do need to have more people opening up because when we have more people talking about psychosis, talking about hallucinations, delusions, or paranoia, we normalize the conversation because it really isn't. It's okay. It's okay to have schizophrenia, and we need to make sure that people know that it's okay so that they aren't ashamed of themselves and that we are eliminating those different barriers for people getting the proper medical treatment that they need.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the kind of the knee-jerk reaction from your mother was, "Hey, wait a minute, don't talk about this," right? This is something that we need to keep between ourselves. But obviously, there was a moment where you felt like, you know what, I need to use my voice and I need to step out and talk about this. What was that decision like for you? And have you talked to other individuals with schizophrenia who are now, for lack of a better word, kind of really coming out to talk about their life living with symptoms? What was the turning point for you, and maybe for others that you know?
Well, the turning point for me was I actually didn't have much of a choice about opening up about schizophrenia. I've had 6 psych ward stays. For my second psych ward stay, unfortunately, the police were involved. So sort of setting up the scene a bit. The night before, I did the responsible thing and went to the hospital, went into the ER to get some help because I was feeling suicidal. I needed some adjustments to my medication. I wanted to be in a safe place. They let me stay in the ER overnight, and then the doctor realized that I was okay to go back to my dorm room, so he let me go back to my dorm room. But when I went back, I was not only greeted by my 3 roommates, but also the RA and a can't help person. And when we all talked, we realized that maybe I should go back to maybe another hospital stay. And I was in no way refusing to go. And I have no past history of violence. Actually, someone with schizophrenia is more likely to be an abuse victim rather than an abuser. For example, I lived in an abuse shelter for a while in high school. And what happened next was really inexcusable because they brought in police officers into my dorm room, patted me down, and I had to convince them not to put handcuffs on me. And then they escorted me into a marked police car, and they were all in full uniform as well. And the police car was parked in front of a dining commons, so fellow students saw me getting into a police car. So really, why I had to open up was because when I came back from the hospital, the cat was out of the bag, people knew something was up, and I had to set the story straight. So I don't regret opening up about my schizophrenia, but it shouldn't have been handled in that way.
Unbelievable. To have individuals living with really any brain disorder, but especially schizophrenia, that they become criminalized because of something that is obviously only a piece of who they are. It is not who they are. It seems to be, unfortunately, the lens with which people view individuals living with mental illness, that it is who they are, just not a part of who they are, right? That it becomes the identifying factor. And I can imagine how difficult it would be, mostly living with assuming that that's how people are viewing you, that all of a sudden the lens with which you see everyone else may be different as well. And that's got to be quite a challenge.
Right. And also that just kind of touches on also the stereotypes that people think someone with schizophrenia has. Like they treated me, even though, the law enforcement treated me as if I was dangerous. And this is really why we need to have better representation of schizophrenia on the news, especially when we talk about the gun violence debate. We need to also make sure that different characters, fictional characters that have, the diagnosis of schizophrenia on film or on TV are also both accurate and respectful representations, because that's how people learn about schizophrenia, unfortunately. And I remember the first time I heard the word schizophrenia, it was from watching the TV show Criminal Minds. Not the best way to learn about it.
I agree. It seems like growing up on Law and Order and some other crime shows like that, it was always the individual that had a schizophrenia at the end of the episode was the one that did the crime. And like you mentioned, the statistics are that you're 12 times more likely to be the victim of violence than the perpetrator living with a mental illness, which I've unfortunately seen throughout my career here. But obviously, the work that you're doing with students with schizophrenia is hopefully challenging popular culture beliefs and working with students about finding their voice. Tell me a little bit about the work specifically that you're doing through your organization.
Yeah, so Students with Schizophrenia is an organization where we're empowering student leaders Part of this is by empowering them by founding clubs. We have a whole bunch of other student leader initiatives kicking off, such as we're helping them with social media. We're also, because that's a great way to help making social change, is through giving students a voice on social media. Also being activists, sort of taking the next level. We have a lot of mental health advocacy going out there, but we need to start taking the next level to mental health activism. So really empowering students of also knowing their rights when it comes to what their rights are on college campuses, also in the workforce, knowing what type of reasonable accommodations they can ask for. These are things that help empower students so that they aren't afraid to ask for the things that they need. And also this doesn't, it helps them not to go into this spiral of self-stigma.
I have so much faith when I speak to you. I'm a little older, but I always say that I feel like I have a fairly open mind and progressive look when it comes to these type things. But I'm always put in check when I talk to young people like yourself and others who I think that are ready to move beyond talking about stigma and really getting to work on how can we change our society, how can we change policy, how can we change, really systemically change the way our society works, views, and understands schizophrenia. So, we need more young people like you to be out to really kind of crack the shell around people like me and others who think we understand. But you guys are going to completely shift the landscape over the next generation or two of how we view and work with individuals. And I commend the work that you're doing, not only for yourself, but also for just countless other individuals that are also living with symptoms. So it's just great work that the Students with Schizophrenia is doing, and I appreciate everything that you're doing to help with this movement.
Thank you so much. And I also have a lot of hope in this upcoming generation of our youth, because they do have a very bold and they do give me a lot of hope. They have more energy, honestly, than I do even when I look at the youth, even looking at youth leaders in different movements, such as Greta Thunberg. We have so much to learn from different activists out there and their style and brand of activism that we can learn from and adapt and learn from and bring into the mental health space as well.
It's amazing, speaking of Greta, that it's both tragic and beautiful that we have to have a 13-year-old to teach the world about global climate change, right? That is something we should already be educated on, but how inspiring to have one so young being able to make a global impact on any conversation, much less something that affects every person on Earth. Schizophrenia is 1.1% of the world live with schizophrenia. That's 1 in 100 people. That's a lot of individuals. And like you said, the more that we can get out there and talk about it in such a way that normalizes the conversation around schizophrenia, the better it is for not just those living with schizophrenia, but all those in our society. So thank you, Cecilia. We talked about you've got so many resources online. You were part of a TEDx conversation years ago that really kind of propelled you and your organization into the spotlight. And I encourage folks to go to your website. It's www.sws.ngo, the non-governmental organization website, sws.ngo, and learn about students with schizophrenia. You can meet folks that are a part of their team. You can get involved. There's some really great resources, and donate if you can. It is a nonprofit organization doing some incredible work. So we would love to try to get as many people to come over and support your organization as possible. Any other closing thoughts that you'd like to leave? Yeah. Any other closing thoughts you would like to leave us with today?
Well, I just wanted to sort of add on to what you're saying. We are 1.1% of the world's population over the age of 18. Mm-hmm. So we aren't a niche pocket, a topic, people with schizophrenia. And if we want to address these societal concerns such as homelessness, unemployment, dropout rate from college, suicide rate, attempted suicide. We need to be including people who have schizophrenia in the conversations because we are very prevalent in those different communities. So we need to make sure that we are listening to the voices of people with schizophrenia so that we move away from sort of the neurotypical bias that is currently at the decision-making table.
Wonderful point. And for those of you who are out there listening who may be living with schizophrenia or have a loved one close by, going to Students with Schizophrenia can maybe, like you said, find that community, find the people that can be with you and around you to support you through not only the symptoms that you're experiencing, but finding your voice and talking about schizophrenia to your loved one and society as a whole. So thank you so much. I know that we could talk for hours, and I'm sure we will personally as we move forward, but we would love to have you back again soon. So thank you so much, Cecilia, for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Luke.
If you want to know more, again, check out Cecilia's website at www.sws.ngo. And they have social media as well, all over social media. And thanks again for joining us on the STARR Coalition podcast. Again, we love to get together with thought leaders like Cecilia and others and mental health and discuss topics that really do affect each and every one of us. Continue to follow the STARR Coalition on social media and on our website at www.thestarr.org, THESTARR.org. And until then, we'll see you soon.